Good evening. That's all right, everybody's pretty good. They're quieting right down. Thank you, and I don't like necessarily disturbing your dinner, so continue to eat. And I am Jennifer Stanley. No more of that cheering. And it is my honor to welcome everyone and to thank you for coming. This is definitely a celebration, and it is my extreme pleasure as president of the board of the Robert Bowne Foundation to thank you for the professional friendships, commitment, and visionary roles you have played in the work of the foundation. And you are the team we depended on to bring about our dreams of transformational education and programmatic change in out-of-school programs. I know many of you, and I also don't know many of you, and I hope that during the evening we'll have a chance to meet. And I want to thank everyone for, again, coming and joining us in this somewhat bittersweet celebration, gala celebration. I would love to introduce the members of the board who are here, and if you want to come up, I would love you to come up to the podium, but at the same time, if you stood at your chairs, I would like you to stand so you can be recognized, so that during the evening, other people will come up and introduce themselves and get to know you better. So Suzanne Carruthers, who... Suzanne is as a professor at NYU Steinhardt School of Education, and I'm going to give you just ever so brief titles that these people, our board members, hold, just to give you the breadth of the diversity we have. Jane Quinn. Jane is Assistant Executive Director of the Children's Aid Society. Andrew Fisher. Yep. Executive Director of the Lavelle Fund for the Blind. We have 4 members who are not here tonight, I'm sorry to say. We have Mitch Lee, he's an investment manager at Goldman Sachs. Cecile Traw, who's a graduate school, dean of the Graduate School of Bank Street School of Education. Susan Comiskey is formerly with Bowne & Co. Inc. and a part of their management team. And then Robert Stonehill is Managing Director of American Institutes of Research. Unfortunately, they could not come tonight, and I wish you could all meet them. Anyway, I'd like to give you a little bit of history to explain why the Robert Bowne Foundation has decided to spend out. And so we took this decision very seriously, and about 10 years ago at this time, we made that decision. And by way of coming to that decision, I think I'll tell you a little bit about the history of the foundation. So the Robert Bowne Foundation was established in 1968, and the man behind the idea of the foundation was my late husband, Ted Stanley. He was president and chairman. He was president and chairman of the Bowne and Company, Incorporated. In 1968, the company had just gone public, and Ted was feeling flush. Now, I wasn't around, so he told me this, and generous. And he was a generous person. His generosity had been definitely part of his education by his mother and father, who were also very generous people. So in the beginning of the foundation, and this is what they decided, they would make grants to organizations which had programs for the improvement of the educational, social, and economic status of disadvantaged people in New York City. For the most part, grants were to be made where they helped young people and where the grant could play a significant role in the success of the program. So in early years, Ted ran the foundation, but Bowne and Company would give an annual gift to the foundation, and also members of the Stanley family would give money, and Ted would distribute this money, and mostly to youth organizations. However, it was basically a family foundation, so the gifts were definitely family members had a say in where they might want gifts to be made. So I came on the scene in 1978, and Ted thought it would be very helpful if I made visits to individuals and sites submitting grant proposals. I had no experience in this. I remember this vividly because I met poets, organizations working on prison reform, community service organizations helping the mentally ill, as state institutions were all closing, daily, youth groups in Chinatown, the Village, and the Lower East Side, and on and on. So I had an early primer in placating the giving wishes of family members, and the absence of any real foundation theme or purpose of purpose-driven giving. Well, it wasn't long after this, in 1983, that Ted hired Diane Kangasser. He hired her away from literacy volunteers. And it didn't take Diane long before she made the argument for focusing the Robert Bowne Foundation's grant-making in out-of-school programs. In 1987, she prevailed upon Ted and the board for an additional emphasis on programs that were willing to innovate and aspire to make literacy education an integral part of their after-school programs. And so that's really a beginning of definitely our history. She was on a mission, and she was looking for transformation an after-school program. We're all into transformation. To achieve her goals, Diane promoted the expenditure of an even greater amount of the foundation's assets than required by law, especially in times of great need. And I remember Ted having, I don't want to say deer in the headlights, but it was like, Diane. But Diane prevailed. And of course, we all know times of need. Have you remembered a time when youth programs weren't in a time of need or desperate for money? So Diane was passionate and persuasive. I think you all know that. And thus began our history of spending principle for programmatic change, as well as helping to keep worthy organizations operational under continual political and economic odds. Unknowingly, Diane put us on this trajectory of spending out. She taught us that action now was better than delay and frugality. Today, under the expert leadership of Lena and Ann, we have continued our focus. And in fact, they have put us on high test. The last 10 years of our spend down have been advocacy for literacy out of school and after-school education par excellence. Everyone here tonight is a testament to the work and mission of the foundation. And we know you have the passion. You also have, or rather, the fire in the belly, if you will, to carry on and to continue in our absence. And now it is my pleasure to bring Lena Townsend to the stage. Okay, while Lena is making her way slowly to the stage, Andy is going to read something, I believe. I just got a message. But I also want to just remind you that Lena and Ann came to the foundation in 2000, 15 years ago. And of course, they were associated with many of the programs for years and years before that. So Lena was hired as our first executive director full-time, and Ann our first program director full-time. And we are indebted to them for their leadership. So again, while Lena is making her way to the stage, Andy is going to read or tell us a little bit about his, well, I'll let you. You bet. You bet.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Good evening. This is true love, right? Coming out on a night like this in a somewhat far corner of Manhattan. Well, Lena asked me about the possibility of reading an essay that I had written in the spirit of the Bowne Foundation's commitment to literacy and to documenting what we do and to hopefully being thoughtful about what we do. And so I did write, I wrote a little bit about my experience as a Bowne Foundation board member. And should I just go forth and should it's, okay, so here goes. I have it on my iPhone here. Years ago, when Lena, Jennifer, and Jane were good enough to invite me to join the Robert Bowne Foundation's board, I accepted with alacrity and real enthusiasm. I'd known and admired several Robert Bowne Foundation board members and staff members for years, but my deepest interest was much more deeply rooted. For I had also worked for most of my life as a high school and college English teacher and then as a foundation officer with special focus on youth development. And the Robert Bowne Foundation had long been a leader in setting high standards in New York and in America's out-of-school youth fields and in driving implementation of best practices through smart grant making. The Foundation's trademark was and remains inspiring, guiding, supporting a very special kind of learning that is engaging, informal, inquiry-based, and centered on literacy. Most people who've ever been teachers, parents, and mentors to young people know almost intuitively that this kind of learning can be uniquely appealing and effective for children and teens from all backgrounds. Much quantitative and some qualitative research supports this almost common sense insight. I'd also experienced the power of informal learning firsthand in everything from my summers as a camper to my time as a Big Brother mentor to a decade of guiding tens of millions of dollars of grant making for out-of-school youth development programs. As a grant maker, I respected Bowne for its evidence-based program and grant-making principles and discipline-giving focus, its expertise in learning styles and topics that delight, move, and quietly speak to young people, the staff's humility in being open to continuous learning from peers, grantees, and the out-of-school field at large, the consistency with which the Bowne Foundation included careful documentation and assessment components as appropriate in grants, and made time for reflecting about its own grant-making practices and lessons learned. It has been said that the two cardinal sins of foundation work are arrogance and ignorance. I know of no foundation even close to the Bowne Foundation in size that has consistently done a better job of avoiding those sins. And in fact, I think that Lena, Ann, Karen, Jennifer, and the entire team embody quite the opposite. As the Bowne Foundation now comes to this bittersweet moment, I can say that while I began my Bowne Foundation association with enthusiasm, I'll be ending it with something more: heartfelt pride. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As you all know, I'm Lena Townsend, Executive Director of the Robert Bowne Foundation. Before I begin my remarks, I'd like to thank a few people for making this evening very special. Thank you to the Tribeca 360 staff, to Vinnie Martucci, his band, his daughter Katie, and the group she sings with, the Ladles. To Joe Rena Ferry, who put together the presentation that you'll see, and he put it together in a week and a half. So I wish Joe was still here because he's like an amazing person. Daniela Van Genup, who has designed all of our materials, including After School Matters and tonight's program. Josh Mackie for his brilliant work with the Memory Pavilion, which I hope you will use, and so many other projects with us throughout the years. And Marcia Smith, who coordinated this whole thing, and her wonderful staff. You might not know this, but Marcia and I go way back because we did this for the first PACE conference. Yay, Marcia! At Lehman College. Okay, so these are my remarks, and hopefully I will not cry. I can't believe that we're at the end of a journey that for me seems like it was destined to happen. In 1979, I was working at Mount Sinai and studying for, yay, Sinai? Any Sinai people here? Maybe while I was there, you never know. I was working at Mount Sinai and studying for a master's degree in reading at Teachers College. For some reason that I can't remember, since I planned to work with school-age children, I decided to take an independent study course on teaching adults. There were virtually no materials for teaching beginning adult readers at that time. Somehow, I found Literacy Volunteers of New York and spoke to a wonderful person there who sent me a carton of books that had been published by Literacy Volunteers. Nearly 10 years later, while sorting through papers, I came across those books and a letter from Roger Dovner, who was then director of the New York Public Library Centers for Reading and Writing. Diana's here shaking her head. By that time, I'd left Mount Sinai and I was teaching adults full-time. or what passes for full-time when you're an adult educator. I was teaching at the New York Public Library Centers for Reading and Writing, where Roger was director. Around January 1989, I was asked to join the Bowne Professional Development Group by Marcy Wolf, who's there somewhere. She described it as a group that met monthly to read and learn about after-school programs and to do professional development with their staff. She said I wouldn't exactly understand what they did, and she was right. But they paid a stipend. And with my patchwork of part-time adult ed jobs, I needed the money. That's when my journey with Bowne began. In that group, I met Marcy Wolf, Karen Griswold, Ann Lawrence, Sarah Hill. Do these names sound familiar to you? Susan Ingalls, Linda Vereline, and Charlotte Marchant. And I came to better know Ozzie Elowich, who was then my supervisor at the Lehman College Adult Learning Center. Later, I met Diane Kangasser and came to realize that when I talked with Roger back in 1979, Diane was his boss, and Karen, Ann, and Sarah were or would soon be staff and volunteers there. I can just imagine Diane, Roger, and Karen sitting at a shared office when I talked with Roger. I can just see it. In 1979, I'd unknowingly made a connection with the people who would later become my friends and colleagues 10 years later. And I'd like Marcy, Karen, Ann, Sarah, Susan, Ozzie, Linda, and Charlotte to stand up. The original Bowne Professional Development Group. My association with the foundation has lasted nearly 27 years, and those have been the richest years of my life, especially from 1989 to 1999 when I worked directly with programs through my work at the Institute for Literacy Studies. I remembered so many after-school programs when they were just in their infancy. New Settlement Apartments, Bronx Works, Fresh Youth Initiatives, Stanley Isaacs Neighborhood Center, and Rauschenbusch Metro Ministries, to name just a few. From the Bowne Professional Development Group members, I learned how to do professional development and technical assistance with after-school program staff. From Cecilia Traw and my colleagues at the ILS, and Cecilia is one of our board members now, I learned about ethnography and inquiry. I drank the New York City Writing Project Kool-Aid. If anybody knows the Writing Project, you know what I mean. I'm a Writing Project person. I think they're perfect. Through our Bowne funding, we were on the cutting edge of professional development with after-school programs. The Youth Practitioners Institute, the first extended professional development offering for youth practitioners, I'm sure, and reimagining the after-school program, the first program that provided programs with extended management and programmatic TA, along with 3 years of funding. Perhaps most importantly, I learned about the role of community-based organizations in communities and fell in love with the people who make them the great organizations that they are, all of you. Many of you have become my very dearest friends. In 2000, I came to the foundation to work part-time as program officer while I went to graduate school at Wagner. I planned to be here only until graduation in 2002. Once again, the universe, as Anne would say, had something else in store for me. That 2.5 years stretched to nearly 16. During that time, I had the opportunity to use what I learned at Mount Sinai, budgeting mostly, and at the ILS, everything else, to take the seeds of Diane's ideas and develop them into the trees that they are now. After School Matters, Diane's idea, is not only a thriving journal, but a multi-layered national program with fellows who engage in inquiry and write articles, as well as the Edmund A. Stanley Jr. research grantees. The evaluation work that Diane started with an evaluator training back in the late 90s has, through the determination of Kim Sabo Flores and Anne, become a program through which we can now look at cross-site indicators as well as evaluate the specific interests of the programs. In 1998, I returned to graduate school at NYU's Wagner School because I believed that professional development was not enough to make lasting change. We needed policy change. There, I met Michelle Yancey, Dara Rose, who I actually kind of knew from her work at, Project Reach Youth. I'm sorry. Huh? And Pace. Oh, that's right. She was at Pace. Okay. I forgot she was at Pace. Okay. And Carol Thomas. I met Carol Thomas. I'd like to say that Michelle and Dara made the biggest impact on me since my major was policy. However, really, it was Carol who changed my life by setting up QuickBooks for the foundation and teaching me to use it. Where are you, Carol? Stand up, Carol. Well, I was going to say, all of you who have received checks from Bowne, give Carol a hand. The policy and advocacy work progressed through our funding to the After School Alliance, Citizens Committee for Children, the Neighborhood Family Services Coalition, NISAN, TASK, United Neighborhood Houses. And we've made it possible for youth practitioners to become after-school ambassadors and advocates. I haven't covered all of our projects because there have been so many, but I'm proud to say that over the past 15 years, we've taken the work of Diane and the professional development and TA groups and brought forth mighty oaks from acorns. Thank you all for allowing me to share this journey with all of you.
Wow. Lena suggested that I watch this for the first time tonight and then respond to it. So that's my response. Wow. That really knocked my socks off. Yeah. Anyhow, Lena and Jenny and the board have really sort of given you a real sense of our work. I wanted to share with you part of my story. My life and my career have always been grounded in literacy, reading and writing. And Diane hired me in 1982 to become the site advisor, or coordinator, whatever we called them back then, at the Literacy Volunteers. This is the foundation of my career. I was very lucky to have two, well, actually many, but two in particular wonderful mentors. Karen Griswold and Roger Dovner, who is not here. Through wonderful professional development, weekly meetings discussing our practice, our problems, our issues, our questions, reading research, going to Teachers College to learn about the writing approach, process writing. Also, the New York Writing Project also had a very big impact on me too. And through that and the adult literacy program, I learned the essential ingredients to good learning experiences. Number one, all learning experiences need to be learner-centered. You have to involve the learner, find out what's important to them, what do they want to learn. And you always work from people's strengths. Don't use a deficit model. Setting up a supportive learning environment where a learning community can evolve and where people feel supported and can take risks that they need to take in order to learn. Having an inquiry stance. Actually, that is basically constantly thinking about your questions. What is it that you want to know about this topic? And what do I want to learn? Setting goals and objectives. Assessment and evaluation has always been a part of my being a teacher and evolved to wanting to be when I became a program coordinator. I just was not happy with these standardized tests. I'm sure you're all very shocked. And so at each of these programs, we really explored what is it that we want to know about the learner? What would be helpful for volunteers to know? What would be helpful for the program manager to know? Reflection. This is number one. For learning, reflection is essential. It's essential to know what have I learned and how do I know it? And most important is to understand that learning takes time. All of our professional development has been hands-on and is done over time. And if I think back to all my best professional development experiences, they were done over time within a learning community where I chose what I was going to learn about. Okay. The professional development group. Well, this is how I went full circle. I started out as an elementary school teacher, and I came full circle when Diane became executive director of the Bowne Foundation and brought in adult educators to figure out how can we support youth practitioners? How can we help them move from being a safe and babysitting program to something that really engaged young people? And that was the question that we have even today. What is it we can do to better support programs? And which I'll be carrying on with a legacy grant to work with the Center for Educational Options to continue the networking and some of the professional development that we've offered in the past. Another big one was reimagining the after school. That's where I think we all began to understanding that you needed multiple supports, not only professional development for programs, but management, mentoring, the whole 9 yards, and evaluation. Working with OST programs, change takes time, so we need to fund general support and capacity building. And that's the one thing I can't say enough. So with that, I want to thank everyone. This has been such a phenomenal experience for me. My working with Lena, my sister from another mother, and as well as working with all the people that are here. So, as I told people when they're coming in, And I said, I'm planting several of you because I know you're not going to let me down. We wanted folks to, there's the woman with the microphone, for people to share maybe a memory or something they would like to say at this time. A story.
Okay.
Susan.
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Always a willing plant for Anne.
Thank you.
I think to me what's most lasting and durable and unique, distinctive about Bowne is that you've always put people and community at the center. We really live, those of us who are in the community-based organization world, we live in a top-down world where we're filled with top-down expectations, what funders expect, what other people expend. You've always paid attention to the grassroots up. You've put the children at the center of the work. You've put the children at the center of our professional development. You've put the children at the center of the community that you've built, and you've put the children at the center of your foundation work as a funder. And for that, I'm just so deeply lasting and grateful because you've really set a standard and a support and a model that is just irreplaceable and precious. So thank you. That is an amazing legacy.
Thank you, Susan. Bill Newland.
Bill Newland, retired AED at Jacob Resettlement. I was young in my career. This is about 1993. And I think it was Janet Kelly who said, you should get in touch with the Bowne Foundation. So I got in touch, and Diane Kangasson came out. And those of you who know Diane, she came out. And, well, you know, we were just getting started in literacy, and so we were walking around, and, you know, I really thought, I said, okay, got this going. And Diane said something at the end that I never forgot. She said, Bill, you have the boat in the water, but you have no oars. Blew me out of the water with that one. But she stayed with me. She stayed with me. I think she also introduced me to the Fund for the City of New York, the Management Initiative Program, where I met some of the people in the room, Allison over there, Janet. And they were just great in terms of helping Jacob Reese, because there was a lot going on out there, just grow. And then I had met Ann and Lena at PACE, and it's just been a wonderful journey with the Bowne Foundation and how they work with community-based organizations. And I just want to thank you all for the work you have done.
So this is Stephen from Union Settlement Association. I think for me the biggest thing has been you guys have been a great partner. You know, so it's like when you guys come to our sites to really work with us around literacy, it wasn't like pointing out the issues and then leaving us to figure it out. You guys stayed there, worked with the directors and the frontline staff to really make it happen. So thank you for your support.
Doing that very well. Good evening. Sabrina Evans-Ellis, Executive Director of the Youth Development Institute. I've been thinking about the many tables that we've sat around together, but I think my lasting memory is just as a practitioner. The Robert Bowne Foundation worked with me and my team when I was out at St. Nick's Alliance, and we were all struggling at that time to figure out how can we impact young people in their learning, how can we impact themselves, impact them as students and how they feel about themselves as students, because we had lots of kids telling us, I feel dumb, I didn't do well on my test, I don't think that I'm a good student. And when we did our visioning work and we thought about it, what we came up with was we really want to promote a love of learning. And we turned to the Robert Bowne Foundation and said, is that enough? And you said yes. And we are so thankful that you said yes, because it freed us up to be creative and to really inspire kids to just love learning for its own sake and to discover and rediscover how strong and powerful they were as students. So as a practitioner, I thank you for that. But you also took it a step further. You helped us not only name it and claim it, but prove that it mattered. You helped us through participatory action research. You made us prove it, you made us think about it, and become rigorous about proving that a love of learning is core, it's central, and it's the foundation of everything. So for that, as a practitioner, and now as a leader of people who are trying to do the same kind of work, I thank you for that gift. Thank you.
Hi. Yeah. All right. So first I want to say, I'm Keith Hefner, I'm the Executive Director of Youth Communication, but I think if I went back, at least 4 out of 5 of our proposals to the Bowne Foundation were turned down. So this is a mostly unpaid testimonial. So what I appreciated about the Bowne Foundation was, and people have said this in different ways, but I think I'd like to say it really directly, that they recognize the connection between literacy and youth development, and that they rescued, in a sense, literacy from school. And I'm all in favor of all the literacy they do in school, but literacy is also language. Reading about others is how we learn about ourselves. Using language is how we form our identity. Our ability to use language gives us agency in the world. And to me, that connection between youth development and literacy is what is most memorable about the approach of the Bowne Foundation.
I started as a literacy volunteer in my 20s, and Karen Griswold and Roger Duvner were the trainers, and I remember Diane coming around, and I was just blown away by your passion and your enthusiasm. And I decided to go get my master's at Harvard School of Education because I was so in love with community-based education because of you. Then I came back and I started working at Literacy Assistance Center, and I got trained by Marcy Wolf, who's a master trainer in an institute. I mean, my whole professional career has been, and then I started working at the professional development group with Lena, and we developed all these institutes and trainings and experimented and have so much fun, really a lot of fun. Then I went and got my doctorate, and I came back and I had fallen in love with youth work, where I started in adult basic ed and then went on to youth work because of you guys. And Lena, you were the only one. I kept saying we need to have youth workers elevated to the point where they can do research and learn methods of inquiry and do research on their own programs. And I swear, Lena, you were the only person who got it. And when I had the opportunity to work with you, and we designed the Practitioner Research Fellowship and the Edmund A. Stanley Research Grant, and we took the journal to a whole different level, you were such a partner. I mean, I know I'm hard to supervise.
That's an understatement.
I know, I'm like really hard, but man, she stuck with it. And boy, we have the fellowship now.
That's why I have gray hair.
Yeah, that's how she got her gray hair. But man, Lena, that fellowship now, we just came back, we did our first national fellowship with fellows from all around the nation. It was so, so powerful. I think it's not just you had an impact on a New York basis, which you did. You're having an impact on a whole different level, a national level. So I think you should feel so proud. We love you so much, and you're the best boss I ever had. You really are. Thank you.
This is our Robert Bowne story. Years ago in the early 90s, my buddy and I started a youth program in Washington Heights on the corner of 172nd and Fort Washington. And even though we were pretty cocky and arrogant at the time, the truth is we had no idea what we were doing. We knew we wanted to work with young people. We wanted something different. But at the time, we didn't know it was after school. And Robert Bowne released an RFP for a grant called Reimagining After School. Some of you might have gotten that. We received that. It was our first major competitive grant proposal we went after, and it meant everything to us at the time. You know, we were here, we were doing this stuff, we were in a railroad flat apartment we converted into an after-school program. we were doing things back in the 1990s and that would probably get you arrested. You know, two guys walking through Washington Heights. You know, send your kids to our apartment after school. You know, we'll take care of them. You know.
So those are some tough acts to follow, huh? Wow, what wonderful comments. I want to say a few things about the Robert Bowne Foundation as a foundation. I have worked for a couple of them. I've had my hands in many of their pockets as a supplicant, and I've had the pleasure of being on the Bowne Foundation board for, I think, about 12 years. And I think that the Bowne Foundation exemplifies what I think of as the role of the servant leader. And it's very, very unusual for a foundation to take on that role. You know, that role of, somebody once told me it's about confident humility or humble confidence. And I think the Bowne Foundation really exemplifies that, and it is very, very unusual. The Bowne Foundation has had a focus in a way that no other foundation I know has had, and I think that it comes from the sturdy confidence in the truth. And the truth is that literacy is central to not only an individual's productive adulthood, but central to democracy. So we've heard a lot about how you guys are as a grant maker. And as a board member of this foundation, I just want to say I'm very proud of the focus and the truth. Thank you.
I would just like to apologize to those people who are here who did not get a grant from us. I have met two people, Linda and Keith. I didn't know you were here. I'm very sorry. It was probably an oversight. I did not bring my wallet, but I will try to talk to the powers that be to see what I can do for you. And the other thing is, since I am now in my 70s, I would like to offer a piece of advice to all of you, wherever you're working, whatever you're doing, and that is to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you and who know more than you, and keep your mouth shut. And eventually, you will get credit for everything.
Well, I mean, what can I say after Diane? I just want to thank you all for being here. It's a really special night. It's been a joy for us. I know absolutely for Ann and for Karen and for me and for Sarah and for Diane and all the people who've been, staff members and board members of the foundation. I think we've probably learned more than you all could ever know because we learned from you. And I just want to thank you.